Welcome to Teaching Truth. In our reflections this week, we've been looking at the relationship that Moses had with his brother Aaron. And we were thinking yesterday particularly about the support that Aaron gave to his younger brother Moses. And throughout his life, from the cradle to the grave, Moses had the support of his elder brother. And today we come to meet these two elderly brothers as they walk into the court of Pharaoh and have an encounter with him. Let's read of that encounter from Exodus chapter 7. Moses and Aaron did just as the Lord commanded them. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. Now just pause there for a moment and reflect on that. Moses 80 years old and Aaron 83 when they spoke to Pharaoh. One brother has a speech impediment, has a stammer, has a stutter. The other brother probably has white hair and probably has to use his rod as a walking stick. So the thought of these two 80-year-old men, old men, walking into the court of the great Pharaoh to address him, you can just picture the image, is almost a joke, is almost laughable. And yet, God was on their side. Because Moses and Aaron did what? Did just as the Lord commanded them. And so the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when Pharaoh says to you, perform a miracle, then say to Aaron, take your staff and throw it down before Pharaoh, and it will become a snake. So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw his staff down in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it became a snake. Pharaoh then summoned the wise men and sorcerers, and the Egyptian magicians also did the same things by their secret arts. Each one threw down his staff and it became a snake. But Aaron's staff swallowed up their staffs. Yet Pharaoh's heart became hard and he would not listen to them, just as the Lord had said. Aaron cast down his rod, his staff, his crook as it were, before Pharaoh. And we want to think about the staff and the significance of the staff in our reflections today. Aaron cast down his rod before Pharaoh. Now this was not exactly the same miracle which Moses experienced on Mount Sinai and performed before the elders of Israel that we read of in Exodus chapter 4, because that saw the rod of Moses turn into a serpent. But actually, if you dig into the Hebrew here, a different word is used. Something like a crocodile or a dragon, which was something of a symbol of the Egypt of the day itself. So when cast down, it became like a dragon or a crocodile. The connection with the symbol of Egypt is abundantly clear. Pharaoh's magicians imitate the miracle of Aaron's rod. They all threw down their rods as well, and they became dragons or crocodiles. You see, magic was very prevalent in those days in Egypt. And this wasn't just kind of ordinary magic in the sense of doing simple magic tricks. No, this was examples, and the Egyptian magicians were examples of dark demonic power apparently appearing to do miracles. And let me just say this, because this is important even in today's context, that apparent miracles, and I use that phrase quite deliberately, apparent miracles are part of Satan's arsenal. Just as apparent miracles in the sense of what was experienced that day in the court of Pharaoh were apparent miracles. You see, miracles can prove that something is supernatural, of course they can, but they cannot prove that something is true. And the Egyptian magicians were intelligent, they were learned men, they were clever men, but they lacked the wisdom of God, always learning, but never able to come to the knowledge of the truth. They were imitating the miracle of Aaron's rod. Every man threw down his rod, and they became serpents or crocodiles or dragons. However, Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. You see, Aaron and Moses had God on their side. And Aaron's rod swallowed up their rod. Aaron's staff swallowed up their staff. Now, the imagery is left to our imagination. But there is a biblical lesson, I think, for us all to see and to learn here. And it's this, that God swallows up, as it were, through the death of Jesus Christ on the cross, all the evil rods, all the evil in the world. He has dealt with the dragons. He has slain the dragons. He has dealt with those spiritual crocodiles. He has dealt with that slithery snake called Satan, which found its way into the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. God has overcome those snakes, those crocodiles, those metaphorical dragons. Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. Aaron and Moses had the victory. God performed a true miracle. God was displaying his power through two 80-year-old men, one with a stammer, one who could hardly speak, and another one who probably used his staff to help him walk. Aaron's rod swallowed up their rods. Friends, we have the victory in Jesus, because Jesus, as it were, through his death and through his resurrection, has swallowed up the power and the forces of evil. And he is able to help us deal with them, as he helped Moses and Aaron in the court of Pharaoh. God used an ordinary staff for an extraordinary purpose. And God can use our staff, whatever we have in our hand today, for his extraordinary purposes. God has, through Jesus, swallowed up the power of evil and of darkness. And in Jesus, we have the victory, just as Moses and Aaron, because God was on their side, saw victory in the court of Pharaoh that day.